constantly shifting through the time-space continuum, Metron's three disciples observe the universe from the Mobius Couch.
Fighting evil by moonlight, winning love by daylight, never running from a real fight. She is the one who welcomes the world to the Mobius Couch, a time-space interdimensional vehicle from which your hosts survey the world of comic books, comic book movies. People of the world, welcome. I'm Alessandro, and as usual, I'm joined on the Mobius Couch by Joe.
Oh, hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm okay.
I'm Joe, everybody.
Before we go on to small talk, we're also joined by Patrick.
Hey, everybody. Love that intro, Al. Really hit me in the nostalgia.
Oh, yeah. I thought you'd like that one. The second he started, I had to mute so I didn't laugh all over his brilliant intro.
Classic song lyric. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're here to talk about, we're actually going to talk about Saga, the comic Saga by
that's
Brian
true,
Vaughan and Fiona Staples.
Saga issues 1 through 6.
It was published by Image Comics, the writer is Brian Vaughan and the artist is Fiona Staples, but they are both considered co-creators because even though it was Brian Vaughan's idea, Fiona Staples' artwork has heavily influenced the story and characters and the overall development of the entire book. So first issue published March 2012. It went on hiatus in 2018 after issue 55, and it just came back from my hiatus in 2022. So if you're a Saga fan,
I can't believe they took that long off. I mean, I knew they were taking the hiatus, or maybe I was so far behind on trades because I was reading it by trades. I wasn't getting it issue by issue, but when you say that time gap, I'm like, holy shit. But also COVID, I guess, too. Maybe
but it's also, I think it's more just that, these millennials don't have the work ethic of older generations. And so they have no issues taking 2 years off and just not working, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, Fiona Staples. She's only drawn every single issue without fail. Her work ethic, leaves something to be desired.
Anyway, I'm sure after 2 years, she had trouble paying for all those avocado toasts. So now, of course, they're back for more paychecks.
We can talk about Fiona Staples for a minute because she's fucking fantastic. And I love the artwork in every, and it's
agreed.
It only gets better. And I know, so she clearly spends more time on the covers, which is fine. And they're so well drawn and but they're not overly painted, but they're way more painted, detail wise than in the interior artwork. But that being said, the interior artwork just gets better and better as each issue goes on. We don't see a lot of that evidence in the first 6 issues that we're covering tonight, but you get into some of the later volumes of this book and you look back at the first 6 issues, you're like, wow, that was a little sloppy. Just in terms of her figure work and what she was doing. But man, she's fucking great.
I love every part of it. I had the same reaction, kind of coming from having read more recent issues.
Some of the recent ones, yeah.
Yeah, it seemed really sparse. There wasn't that much detail or objects in frame. It just seemed kind of lighter artwork. I mean, it's still great, but it just speaks to how much better kind of she gets.
Yeah. She's clearly gotten, just speed-wise probably. She just probably goes a lot faster and gets a lot more done and has a lot more time to add detail. That said, issue 1 is still well drawn. And, it just gets better every issue. It's really... Her artwork's really cool. I really like how she paints the backgrounds and they're not, heavy black lines everywhere and stuff like normal comic books. It's very painterly and just kind of there in the background, and the characters take the forefront and kind of embody that the important part of the panel. The backgrounds always seem sort of just splashes of color, or she just hits everything with light on one side, or it's an interesting aesthetic that's not normally seen in other shit.
Plus one to everything Joe and Al just said about Fiona Staples' art. Brian Vaughan is the writer, and he's one of my favorite comic book writers.
Sorry, Patrick, which Brian Vaughan? Brian F or M Vaughan? Brian P Vaughan? Brian
K Vaughan.
It's K Vaughan.
Right. Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Wait, did I not say the middle initial, or I did? Which part?
You did
not.
No,
you never did.
You said Brian Vaughan, and I mean, you've got to specify
which is fine.
Which one.
How many Brian Vaughns are there?
I
None.
don't think any, but I just like to make fun of. I like to make fun of people who specify their middle initial when no one else in the realm of celebrity is anywhere. Yeah.
I thought you were making fun of me, but you're just making fun of
No,
Brian.
I'm making fun of him. Making fun of him through you.
He's
but,
making fun of him
go ahead.
and J.R.R. Tolkien and George
George
R.
R. Martin. Yeah. Countless people who stress their middle initials when there is no need to. I'm making fun of all of them. But go ahead, Patrick.
He wrote Runaways for Marvel, which was one of my favorite comic books of all time. And I feel like this book is one of those rare instances where the artwork just makes his writing and his vision way more phenomenal. I think that's why, I mean, obviously that's why she gets a co-creator credit on it, because Brian Vaughan said himself that her character designs, like all of these characters are pretty much out of her brain. And like the character,
which is insane.
like, and then even, so here's like a funny thing, how it influences the story. So apparently Fiona Staples does not like drawing mechanical technology. So that's why so much of the technology they use is like the treehouse, rocket ship, things of that nature, because she just like straight up does not want to draw like circuitry and all that shit, which I love because the technology is so bizarre and alien.
Interesting. You know, my brain immediately thinks of like the Chinese parade dragon subway train. It's like a random panel, but like it's just like I think Prince 4, Robot 4, or whatever his name is, lands on, like is like walking up to the train, and it's just like it looks like a parade dragon that you would see in like Chinatown, and it's like it's just a subway train with lights, and you're like, bizarre, but okay, weird choice. But that makes a lot of sense now that you.
Well, I guess that, I mean, honestly, what her art reminds me of and her character designs, have y'all seen those social media posts where like a talented artist, like parent, will take a drawing their kid do and like make it a really cool character, where like they'll take like some random, and that's kind of what her art reminds me of, because the stuff is so wild. It's like she's been able to hold on to her like childhood imagination is completely intact, and she has these skills as an artist, and and it's also very, I mean, Brian
and some of it is a very adult imagination.
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. It's so twisted because it's like, it reminds me of like, I'm like, wow, like, yeah, she's really held on to that childhood imagination, but she applies it in these. I mean, Brian K. Vaughan describes Saga as Star Wars for perverts, and that's because some of the panels in this book is like anything you would like. I've never seen two people with TV heads banging each other doggy style. Like that's one of the first. That's your first introduction to Prince Robot. He's like, it's wild. Love Fiona Staples. She's fantastic.
It's a space opera. It's a fantasy.
Yeah, space opera. It's got a little Romeo and Juliet of people from two warring sides, except instead of killing each other and themselves or whatever, they have a child and have to protect it across the space.
Yeah, opera. I think I wrote Romeo and Juliet in Star Wars, but perverted, which is weirdly close to what he apparently described it as. So I think he nailed it.
If you ever read the book, it's, space opera. There's a planet full of people with wings, and then their moon is full of people with horns, and they've been having a civil war for who knows how long. And the interesting thing too is that the war has expanded all over the galaxy. So the people at home don't even. It's all these proxy wars that are going on between different species that are under the rule.
They just like invade a planet and fight on it and kill everyone there, maybe or maybe not. And then their home planets and moon and planet are like safe and peaceful. They're right next to each other. They don't fight each other, and they're fighting each other all over the fucking galaxy. It's fucking what a weird concept that is already. Let's just outsource our war and fight other places.
Yeah,
fucked up, man.
Yeah, and Brian K. Vaughan has got a lot of accolades. He wrote something called Pride of Baghdad, which I've never read, but apparently his depiction of war is very on point from people who have lived through war. So yeah, it's a giant romance war, but a lot of stuff kind of similar to Mr. Miracle, where it's husband and wife trying to raise a baby, and they're arguing about stuff parents would argue about. So my overall take, y'all both read this before I did, and you kept telling me that I should read it. And back then, I was very much like diehard superhero comic person. I didn't get too much into the independent stuff. And I will say, this is one book where the first time I read it, I really enjoyed it. But this second read through, I think the way I digest comics now is different. I'm more focused on the characters and what's happening there than, the overall story of people fighting against Darkseid and all that stuff. So yeah, I actually enjoyed it a lot more the second time I read it than I did the first time. Which,
interesting.
Yeah. Like a lot.
I had the opposite reaction, but that's interesting.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Also interesting.
Well, I will, because I have a really hot take about one aspect of it, but I'll wait to get into it until we.
Okay. I was just going to respond on Patty's thoughts. I it's interesting that you like it more the second time around. I'm not that I didn't or do necessarily, but like the idea that like you read comics in a different way now, and now you appreciate it in a different way is, it kind of points to what you're appreciating these days. It's interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, one example is that Alana is the winged mother wife character in the story, and Marco is the horned husband father.
Mhm.
And I could not stand Alana the first time I read it. I thought she was so like kind of just angry all the time and just kind of causing problems. And I was more on Team Marco because he was very chivalrous and honorable, and he wouldn't, he took a vow not to kill people and all this stuff. He's very much more like a superhero, right? My second read through, I'm like, Marco's a fucking idiot. Like Alana's the one that like is acting like an actual adult. The part when she's
carrying them through it, and he's standing on principles when he could be helping.
So the first read through, I thought she was so difficult. I was so Team Marco. In this read through, I'm like, no, Alana's the one. Like, yeah, of course she's gonna grab the fucking gun, Marco. Like, we almost just died. Of course, I'm gonna grab the one fucking weapon we have. Since you won't use your fucking magic.
I mean, not that I don't appreciate his principles, but like given your situation, it's like maybe stand on those principles when it's not the life of your wife and child. Anyway, Al, what's your overall take?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's great. Love the art, love the story. I like a lot of Brian K. Vaughan stuff. Why the Last Man, Ex Machina. Was it Ex? Yeah, it was. I think it was called Ex Machina.
Yeah, he wrote Ex Machina.
Yeah.
But I pretty much like all those series. Runaways was great. So when this came out, I just picked it up because I was like, I enjoy Brian K. Vaughan's work in general, and this was great. Love it.
Before we moved into like the next section, I was just gonna say I thought it was interesting. Brian K. Vaughan. So this story he created when he was a kid. Like this world he created when he was a kid, and he's been working on it pretty much his entire life. So it's I learned a new word. It's called paracosm. So it was a paracosm from his childhood, and that was something he's kind of had in the back of his head for, I guess, decades. And then, I started making a comic book, and then met Fiona Staples, and here we are.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So was it a paracosm? Like the Fifth Element was something that Luc Besson invented when he was 16, i.e. he stole it from the Incal and just ripped it off wholesale and tried to pretend it was something he invented when he was a child?
I mean, I think it's very heavily influenced by Star Wars, but I think he admits that it is, Star Wars for.
Yeah, but it's not very Star Warsy. I mean, it is just because of the setting, I guess. But it's.
I actually don't get much Star Wars from this at all. But
I mean, it's a war in space. Other than that, I don't really see a whole lot.
But there's no secret order of Jedi. So
but it blends.
But the winged people are kind of like stormtrooper-ish, and they have troops and soldiers, and the horned people are kind of like magic users with swords and magic, and like I see the correlation. I don't think he utilizes those aspects of the story in the same way, so I don't feel like it's any. I don't think it's very resembling of Star Wars, really.
Yeah, I think the main narrative is pretty different than the Star Wars.
Oh, the narrative is way different. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, my overall take is that I love it, and I can't wait to keep reading it now that they're back from a hiatus. And also, I'm weirdly in between the both of you, whereas my second time around, I was like, yep, love it still the same. Loved it the first time, loved it the second time. My opinion on it hasn't really altered much, but like, maybe it'll shift if I get into it further. We were kind of talking about this when we hadn't started recording the episode yet, but the first 6 issues, other than kind of laying the groundwork and the stage and the characters, like not a whole lot happens. They kind of like walk from point A to point B and get off the planet. Like there's not like a whole ton of like plot development. It's more character development and laying the groundwork for what's to come.
All right, so I'm gonna get right into it. Here's my second read through. Negative take on one aspect of it. Okay. So first of all, I want to stress that I still love the book. Like I still enjoyed rereading it. I'm not at all saying like it sucks or something, anything like that. One thing that really bugged me the second time around was Hazel's narration. Like my memory of it was that every issue, like maybe the first panel and the end would have like some folksy, cutesy oracle from future Hazel. It was all stuff I can't remember, but Grandma used to say, if you need cornstarch, look in the pantry, not the bedroom.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll find a phaser gun aimed at you, and like the panel is someone aiming a gun at Alana or something. Like that's kind of my memory of it. Is just like beginning whatever. It's goddamn constant. Every fucking panel in these 6 issues, you have to read speech balloons and a stupid narration. Constant. I don't know. I could not stand it. It was every panel.
That's interesting. I don't dislike her narration at all. So that doesn't bother me in the slightest. However, I did find myself going, having had read 1 through 55, and granted, my memory of it isn't fantastic or anything, but like, those little hints that she, as a reread of it, those little hints she gives of the future. Like for instance, I actually bookmarked one for this weirdly exact topic. From my very first day, I was pursued by men. All of them tried to hurt me, but only one managed to break my heart. And then she basically, the next page, she's like, "But I'm getting ahead of myself," or something like that. And I'm just like, I wonder if that has already paid off, is going to pay off. Is that for when she's grown up and it's like this whole story will have ended, and that's just like an allusion to like something that will come way later in her life, because we don't know how old she's going to be by the end of this book, kind of thing. Just an interesting, weird, like kind of take on. It's not just folksy crap. Sometimes it's like, these people meant the world to me and then they died or something like that. But usually that pays off relatively quickly. Like that person will die the next panel. But then there's times like that where she just refers vaguely to something, like somebody breaking her heart later on. And you're just like, interesting. I wonder if I'm going to see that, or is that just like something that...
I understand the sort of narrative scope of the narration and why it's there. It felt like way too much on a second read through. There was just... I just would get tired of having to read speech bubbles and having to read her narration. It just felt like a lot. I was over it this time. I don't know why.
I don't know. I feel like really there's not a whole lot of words on the page most of the time. And I don't like, it doesn't take away from the book for me, especially as if you consider her the main character and the main narrator of the story. Like, of course I want to hear from her every episode. She's telling the story,
I don't. I'd rather just have the comic tell me the story rather than have... Oh, another thing that I really didn't like in I think it was still issue 1, just the shoved in expo dump of like, this is why there's a war, this is who's involved, here's the world building that I'm just going to shove in your face for 5 panels. Could have done without. Could have just let the story naturally reveal
I think that's Brian K. Vaughan. I think that's just him trying to set the stage, like clearly, like he just wants to be like, these are the players in this fucking world. So you're talking about the part where she's like, I was born here, but the real war happened way over here, and it's like a shot of the galaxy. Is that what you're talking about?
And it's like 3 or 4 pages of just like, here's the full background
of like, and they were fighting.
Just learn that more naturally, but anyway,
all
these
enough.
criticisms
I can
come from but all these criticisms come from a place of love. I just want to make that clear. I do like the comic. I still like it. Just that narration.
You're not going to get to the end of this episode and be like, so it's a thumbs down from me.
In defense of that way, I enjoy it. It's so Fiona Staples actually that's her handwriting. It's the only thing that she does the lettering for.
I love that part too.
The way I read the comic book, I would read the actual dialogue happening, and then I would go back and read Hazel's narration, because when she's narrating, she is kind of explaining what's happening in the scene. But Joe, to your point, so Isabel is this ghost character that is Hazel's nanny. They do this soul bond thing where this ghost is attached to Hazel and it's her nanny, and when they bond, Hazel's narration says, Isabel was my first. Like, Isabel was my first babysitter. Like, implying that something's probably going to happen to Isabel. And the other
or she'll just have other babysitters along the way. But that being said, like, there's weight behind her narration.
Well, and here's why there's weight behind that one. So Isabel's a ghost. She wants to leave her home planet. She can only do that if she bonds herself to the soul of a living creature. So Isabel says, Alana, I'll help you cure your husband if you bond me to your daughter. So Alana has no choice. She does it. And she asks Isabel, this soul bonding thing, will it hurt my girl? And then Isabel says, only on the day it ends. And the next panel is when they're bonding. And that's when Hazel says, rich kids get nannies, but the rest of us have babysitters. Isabel was my first. So the fact that they kind of imply that if the soul bond ends, it's going to be very painful. And in the next page, they're like, well, Isabel's the first babysitter. It foreshadows that something's going to happen to Isabel, and it's going to be very painful for Hazel. And
which is horrifying.
I would say the way
I immediately empathize.
Yeah. So I enjoyed the narration. It did change how I had to read the story. I would have to focus on, because I would want to focus on Hazel's narration to really get her overall point, but also pay attention to what was actually happening in the story.
I think that's what my main takeaway was on a reread was, like I was kind of saying, was just like, it was not only that I didn't like it, I liked it almost more, but also because I was like, oh, this is a reread. I can actually like take in what she's saying and think about what's happened so far and what might happen. I mean, they call it like, I mean, let's put it this way. Before the hiatus, it was parts 1, 2, and 3 in terms of hardback volumes, but like they call it part 1. So like part 2 of the story, which is going to be like another 50 something issues or whatever they have planned. That's part 2. Like, I wonder how much of it pays off in part 1 or how much of it will pay off in part 2. And if at all, like, cause you might get to the point where Hazel's reached the end of the story and is like, that's the story. And you still haven't known, like, I wonder how many of these things are like in Brian K. Vaughan's mind of like, oh, this is Hazel when she's 70 talking about the story. And like some of this stuff might have happened later in her life, but you know, the book, who knows, the book might end when she's 20, you know, like, I don't know, kind of thing. So that kind of part, that piqued my interest more. So I was like kind of paying more attention to what she was saying.
Brown Hazel is the main character, and that's who the story's going to end with. But for the first several issues, the first part, Hazel's not even, she's just born. So having this narrator who's not a character in the story yet, really, you kind of just want to focus on what's happening. So I kind of can see how it would be frustrating, to Al's point, and it'll be interesting to see how well they develop Hazel's character, because it's going to be interesting when Hazel is a teenager. I'm not sure where she is in the book now because I'm pretty far behind, but to have her on panel doing dialogue with the person in current day, and then have older Hazel doing the narration, it's going to be interesting to see how they develop her character and whether she's going to be more likable than her parents' characters are or less likable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be less because she's a teenager and teenagers suck. Like 100% she's going to be less likable.
I mean, I was an awesome teenager.
What likable teenager have you ever met?
I mean, I met Patty when he's a teenager. I love that guy.
Yeah. Well, but that's when we were teenagers. When you, as an adult, teenagers are the worst.
I mean, I wasn't a teenager when I met Patty.
That's creepy. Okay.
I will say,
context there, or is just this a creepy?
No, I just met him when I was older. And he was currently 18. A teenager.
I was 18. I could get a liquor license to serve alcohol.
Okay. That's kind of like how when I met Kevin Spacey, although I was 17.
God, if I only met Kevin Spacey when I was 17.
If only. Could have flown you out to Hollywood. Fun weekend.
If only. Oh, man. All right, so
said that.
We are kind of jumping around.
We can edit that out.
If she won as a
wonderful actor, we can edit this out. Not a problematic figure in Hollywood at all. Oscar-winning actor, great person.
Oh, and let me just interject here, just because we're talking about Kevin Spacey. Back to UFOs, because when I saw that UFO, I was with Button, and we were just watching.
Let's introduce our new segment. It's called Patty Talks About UFOs. UFOs are real, everybody. Woo!
Is anybody talking about?
I'm still doing the theme song. Woo! Patty, UFOs are real. Go.
Let me answer your question. No one is fucking talking about it.
No one's talking about it. They're real.
And just for our listeners, we had our friend Michael Button over last weekend, and I explained to him that UFOs were real. He did not know this. He thought they were still just conspiracy theories, and he refused to believe it. And then he switched topics. Y'all need to stop being so scared. The truth is here. It's not out there. It's right here.
I just want to clarify. We're talking about our friend Michael K. Button. Back to Saga. Anyway, aliens are real. If you don't believe us, look it up. Pentagon has revealed that they are real. Patrick will talk about this more, I'm assuming, in future episodes.
Oh, every episode till people start paying.
Oh yeah, every episode. We're gonna bring up one alien. That's the alien fact for the week. They're real, everybody. Pay attention.
More
facts are coming your way via Patrick.
Speaking of aliens, let's talk about Saga, which has some interesting
okay.
alien design.
Issue 1 is basically a double-sized issue where they kind of introduce all the characters. What did you guys think about Alana and Marco, like as a whole? Like the second you met them, did you find them sympathetic? Were you like, what the fuck are these people doing? Like, and then I want to discuss that, like that first introduction of like the landfalls showing up and shooting, and the Moonies showing up, and like everything that was going on in that first like little battle scene. Also, there was a literal grease monkey. Good job, Fiona Staples, because I bet that wasn't part of the fucking story.
That went way over my head. Oh my god. He's a genius.
They're in like a body shop, like a mechanic's shop, and like giving birth to their baby, and he's like, oh, like the guy that runs the shop, don't worry about him, like he's cool, like I trust him, Marco says basically, and Alana's like, that fucking grease monkey or something like that, and then later on you see it's literally a monkey,
it's an
alien.
actual monkey.
I'm just like, god damn it. I mean, I guarantee that was just Brian K. Vaughan just being like, whatever, words that make sense, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna make this, and it's insane. Okay. There's a monkey.
Here's the first issue, a good example of why I'm Team Alana over Team Marco now. So the first issue opens with Alana giving birth to Hazel. As soon as Hazel's born, the wings and the horns both show up to kill this family. And Marco is a really badass fighter that we see later on in this story arc.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the fucking Yoda of his people. His magic skills are out of control.
Oh, yeah. In issue 5, Marco fucks some dudes up. Anyway.
Yeah, so he's more than... Marco is... So both sides of this war are here to specifically kill him and his wife and just daughter, who's been alive for maybe 3 minutes. He refuses to fight, and he's telling Alana that she needs to fly. And Alana's like, I don't know if my wings fucking work. I've never been able to fly before. And... I
think it's pretty well known, and I think he knows too that at this moment in time, like I'm if I'm not mistaken, the context is like getting your wings clipped, like as a woman, or maybe all of them. I don't know. I think it's just as women, but like it's basically castration. Like like they do that to the women. I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just her. I don't. I think that gets explained later. But like,
I hope it. I'm interested.
I think it does. I think because there's dudes that are flying around, or maybe it's her. I don't know. Like, so she basically says like, "Fuck you, I can't do that." Like you're asking me to like use a part of my body that hasn't worked and never will. Like what are you talking about? That's not an option, kind of thing.
They call it wing bleeding. Wing bleeding.
Yeah.
But I was going to say again, Alana. So these people are about to kill her, and there's this touching moment where she says, "We're dead. We're dead." Marco says, bullshit, please, you can do this. I know you can, saying, you need to just fucking fly, babe. And she's cradling Hazel, and she just says she needs a name. I don't want my child to die without a name. And it's like, Marco, just fucking draw your sword and fight. Like, what is happening? So I just wanted to say, there's a lot of instances in the second read through where I'm way more on Alana's side than Marco's.
Yeah, I just to jump on that, the first time I read it, though, I was already kind of there. I've always, even from the beginning, found Marco a little bit, just a tad bit insufferable and self-righteous. But Alana,
I agree with you, Al.
But I just thought Alana was the cool. She was the more pragmatic and kind of takes action of the two, and Marco was kind of the more.
I don't know. Marco cuts the umbilical cord with his teeth.
Tom Cruise did that for Baby Suri. That's all normal. I wanted to make a little meta note. First panel, first page, your favorite Hazel narration. I know you two love it. This is how an idea becomes real. So I just thought a little kind of meta note because it's talking about birth and babies, but also first page of a new comic.
Well, yeah.
Oh, no, I like it.
Just wanted to bring that up.
So again, I like it. I like her narration. I think you're wrong. I enjoy her narration.
I don't like it every panel. But anyway, to Patrick's point, I did agree, but even for the beginning, that Marco is a little bit insufferable.
Okay, so we touched on Marco and Alana for like a second, but we have to discuss TV head robot guys.
Yes.
So you see one in that scene real quick, but it's like just that alone drew me into the book more. Like again, her characters, Fiona Staples' character designs, just instantly go like, oh, this is fucking interesting and weird. Like, I'm just like, I love it. I mean, like, what a bizarre idea. I love this idea.
Yeah,
Weird
well, I
thing,
immediately
kind of
I
thing.
liked the two sides of the war, one being magic, one being tech. I liked right away. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
There was a
Yeah.
scene later where they stumble upon a giant battlefield, and it's like a giant turtle that shoots Cyclops laser beams fighting against
Yeah.
a spaceship. And
Yeah.
I thought that was a cool way to set the
I thought that
world
was
up,
cool
with
too,
kind of
just
these
because it
juxtaposing
showed.
forces.
I mean, like they even mentioned it. They're like, "Oh my god, the war has gone this far. Like the front lines have come this far along. Like they weren't here like 6 months ago or whatever they say." But just seeing the scope of the battle, you're like, "Holy shit!" Because there was like just people fighting everywhere. You're like, "God damn, this is just like one planet that they're randomly fighting on."
So the robots are a wealthier planet, I guess.
Aristocrats, I would say.
Yeah, so they threw their hat in with the winged people. Love their character design. So the robot people are they have TV heads and then kind of like a Terminator T-1000 body, like it's all gray. But what I want to say is fantastic character design. Also, great way to develop the character because there'll be moments when the TV people emotion overtake them and an image will pop up on their TV head. And people
it's like they're
what the
losing
fuck was
focus
that?
almost. Yeah.
Well, it's like they lose focus and kind of if they're not, it almost seems that they get overwhelmed emotionally. It's almost like they are having to keep that blank TV face on all the time. And when they lose the control of their emotion, whatever they're feeling is projected onto their screen. So sometimes is Prince Robot, is he gay? Sometimes there'll be like gay porn on Prince Robot's TV face. But there'll be all kinds of weird stuff. And
well, in this first scene, he's having trouble having sex with his wife. I mean, she is a very sexy TV head, but he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't finish. I was just thinking of this bloody horn." And I think it's PTSD, like it's war. That's kind of what he's seeing there for a second. But
do you think Prince Robot's kids would be flat screens? Because they're all like tube television.
I mean, isn't the king a flat screen later on?
I don't remember, but at some point you've got to.
Because the king has like a giant head, like a giant TV screen head. I just can't remember if it's a flat screen or not.
Yeah, it's. I'm pretty sure it's a flat screen. It's an enormous head.
And I guess the grandson would be a cell phone size screen with Quibi, because that's the future of television. So it's got to be
future TV. It's future
it's
TV.
A Quibi phone.
Yeah.
Lying.
I guess my overall point is not only do they look cool, but her character design allowed for them to do some interesting character development. Like, really,
I wonder how much of that was in the first script. So they showed it. Like, me and Al read from the hardback versions of this book, and it kind of gives a script breakdown and like their whole process. But that being said, they choose issue 4 to pick apart. And that being said, I'm kind of going like, well, how much was issue 1? Was he like, they have TVs for heads? Like, I don't know. Who knows? Like, maybe he was just talking to her about it, and she's like, "What if they had TVs for heads?" And he's like, "Oh, I love that idea. Let's go with that." But like, I mean, who knows? Like, that could have been something in his brain from when he was a kid. When he watched Star Wars and pretended he invented this, or something that she came up with that he ran with because he loved the idea of. But really interesting. Right off the bat, kind of into that right away.
Well, I guess we should get into that. The fucking are they the mercenaries? What are they called?
Freelancers. But I wanted to talk about the Will. The Will gets put on the case. Well, he has a little audition, and then he's pissed at them for having him fight.
Well, so this is kind of an interesting. So anyone familiar with the standard storytelling trope of the hero's journey? It's kind of funny because they sort of. Oh, well, it's like standard mythological.
12 steps.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
Begins with.
Well, but it's funny because, like the standard hero's journey is he gets the call to action and he refuses it, but then circumstances make him accept the call to action, which they do to the Will, even though the Will is sort of nominally the antagonist of the series because he's chasing them and trying to kill them. So I just thought it was funny that they kind of do the hero's journey trope, but to the mercenary hunting them. I thought that was a fun kind of spin on the classic.
Well, just to play off your hero's journey, they do a little save the cat moment with the Will. If you are not familiar with the Save the Cat, that's like a screenwriting book where to introduce like an anti-hero, you still have to have them do something like nice. And so the Will,
Yeah.
when you first meet him, he is going to meet this person that's hiring him for the job, and the giant monster comes to attack him, and he kills the monster. And it turns out the person hiring him was like a test to see if the Will could do it. And the Will gets pissed because he had to kill this innocent creature to appease this dumb bitch. So it's a weird moment where it's like, he's a ruthless killer, but he's got a strange sense of morals and ethics because he also rescues this little girl from a sextillion, the sex dungeon planet. But also he has no problem murdering kids. So,
well, I think in the comic,
They bring that up
I
so
think
many
they
times, too.
Specifically, say that there's a woman who's holding the kid hostage at the end, and I think she makes a specific comment just like that, like you have no problem murdering a guy, but you're really not all in to save this woman.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, no, I do. That's my code. And I'm like, all right, well, I get it.
I think an interesting part about Hazel's narration is at the very end of issue 1, she says something along the lines of like, she basically says, I'm not the hero of this story. Like, I don't become like this great savior. I just got to grow old. And that's what my parents did for me. Like, she kind of sets it up to not be this epic story. Like, she goes out of her way to be like, this isn't like a big deal. Like these people just like, they're fucking awesome and they did a great thing. But like, I'm not special, and like, and I really liked how she's like, I'm not a savior. I don't become this big hero. Like, but thanks to these two people, I got to grow old. And I was like, if you look at it from that perspective, like, I think you'll love the payoff at the end of this story, because I think it's issue 1, so like I think it's kind of important to take that away, because like you get to the end of this story and you're expecting something, like he literally tells you right away, like you're not gonna see that. Whether or not she's being humble or it's not true or whatever later on comes to be like different. If you get to the end of the story and you're like, what the fuck? That's all this was her just being like, and now I'm 20 and I got married, kind of thing or whatever. Like it's right here in the first issue. And I thought that was a very interesting like note that she like went out of her way to say.
Well, I think that is a big part of the story he wants to tell, right? Because this is not what the main story should be. There's a giant war. We should be following the Darth Vader and the Luke Skywalker of the story, not this random family. But I think that's the point, is there's nothing special about this baby. She's just different. And just because she's different, 2 entire planets.
She's just a survivor in a war. But she's a refugee.
So it's just, it's a family that is just trying to survive a war, as opposed to following like the generals of the war. We're following the people that are being affected by it, which I think is what he really wants to hammer home, that this is what this story is about. And I think he wants to put that in there probably at the beginning, so like you said, we don't have people being like, I thought she was gonna become this super powerful winged,
I thought she was gonna be John
horn.
Connor and fight the robots, like kind of thing.
Back to the Will, his spaceship is adorable. It's a giant acorn.
It is adorable.
It's a helicopter.
Can you just like picture it falling down from a tree in your backyard when you were 7?
Yeah, but like, it spins, but it's flying through space. Yeah. Like the way she again, back to Fiona Staples not liking to do traditional technology. It's a giant acorn. The top is spinning, flying through space. Loved it. Loved
well,
it.
I like the stock spaceship is really metal. It's like a dragon bone skull ship. It's pretty hardcore.
Everything about
the stock is clearly a fucking badass.
She is
except
phenomenal.
She gets murdered so easily.
Her fucking character, I mean, again with the character designs, but the stock is, because I mean it had been years since I binged the first, I think, 4 trades of this, and then I hadn't read it till just now. And her character design is the one that I remembered more than any other. She's got the 8 eyes like a spider, no arms, like totally batshit crazy. And then the Will, who is just a normal looking dude, looks like Jason Statham or something. They have a romantic relationship, and there's, again, Star Wars for perverts. There's scenes of them fucking. And it's just so bizarre and weird. And yeah, unfortunately, she dies right away.
One of my notes is literally, the stock was fucking terrifying. I remember the first time I read that, I was like, holy shit. Like when she first shows up and she fucking punches Marco's like shoulder through with her weird spiked tongue. And I was like, what the fuck? And then like the next panel is just her like flipping her dress up and all 8 arms have weapons. And you're like, Jesus Christ. Like this is some scary shit.
Well, I like how she's badass, but also like incredibly practical. As soon as like spirits show up and she just sees magic
like, I'm
evil
out.
spirits, she just goes, I'm done here. This is above my pay grade. I'm done.
Well, I think
And
that's
when
indicative
the,
of like as a freelancer, like that's how you survive. You know, it's just like
Well, I
I
mean,
took a job. I'm
100%,
here to do this thing. Oh shit, I'm out. I'll fucking find these people in a minute, and I'll get back.
Well,
to
I
it.
liked it, and also when she
Yeah.
sadly died because of frankly police like overreach on Prince Robot 4's.
She's drawing for a weapon. It's a cell phone.
But even then, she's like nonchalantly like, "I'm freelancer X1912. Here's my document." Boom, and dead. But I just like she's very practical about everything, and I appreciated that of her. But unfortunately, taken too soon.
There's a beat with her and Alana though, which also makes me like Alana more because I love the Stalk so much. The Stalk takes down Marco, wants the baby. Alana has this stun gun, and she pulls the gun out. The Stalk's like, "That's not going to do anything to me. It's a stun gun."
Are you talking about damn bitch?
Yes, and Alana points the stun gun to Hazel's head, and she's like, "I'll kill my baby."
Look at this panel I have marked, Patty.
Yes, she goes, "Damn bitch." Yeah, the Stalk's response to Alana threatening to blow her baby's brains out, she just goes,
I know, it's fucking perfect.
"Damn bitch."
She's
And
basically like, "You wouldn't do that," and she's like, "Oh yeah, well I will do it to keep her." Like she literally is like, "I'll do it to keep her out of the fucking hands of someone like you, you fucking cunt." And she's like, "Damn." But I mean, that's not what upsets her,
because it's like
it's when she puts the gun on the baby and goes, and she's like, "Damn bitch."
Because the dialogue box is like small, so it's like the Stalk can bring it to herself.
Another thing about the Stalk that I loved is when she runs, she uses some of her spider arms to pick up her skirt in front of her so she can run. I don't know why, but I love that little detail.
She's so interesting, so weird.
She's so weird.
But yeah, that little bit about her, like, let's take it easy, like calm it down, and then like Alana's like, "Oh yeah. How about I charge it up?" She's like, "Oh shit! All right, fucking calm down." Damn.
Back to the stun gun. It's called a heartbreaker. And when Marco gets shot with it, he said he felt like his childhood dog just died again, implying that like literally causes like depression and grief inside of a person.
Yeah, it causes. I think it's supposed to be like a stun gun, so to speak, but it's like shock, or like it literally makes you feel something traumatic to stop you from doing whatever you're currently doing.
It doesn't affect you physically like
pretty,
taser.
pretty
it affects your emotions to the point where you're so despondent you don't want to do anything, which is wild.
One quick, just another non sequitur side note that I thought was really cute was, so Alana reads these like Walmart Fabio cover romance novels that are just trash, and Prince Robot 4 finds it and he's reading it and he becomes convinced it's like greater satire for the state of society as a whole, and I love that. He keeps trying to talk to people about it.
He's 100%.
Well, I just like how he keeps bringing it up to like other soldiers of like, were you aware of this book? Like, did you know? And everyone's just like, what are you talking? I think that's hilarious. How he's just, and the cover's just like a big titted woman just like riding a guy, and it's like romance at midnight. But he's convinced that there's like a greater message about society.
It's called A Nighttime Smoke.
A Nighttime Smoke. Classic Oswald Heist.
Oh, you remember the fictional author's name?
It's Oswald D. Heist.
It's classic Oswald
Heist. Anyway, Joe, you were going to topic shift to something else.
Oh, nothing. I was just that you actually kind of hit what I was going to talk about. I was like, let's talk about Prince Robot 4 and his fucking investigation. That's because that's kind of the only other chunk of what's going on, other than the freelancers coming after them and them trying to get off planet with their baby. And Isabel bonding them, which we already sort of touched on. Like, it's basically the only other aspect of this plot so far is that Prince Robot 4 has been put on the case to like find them and shut this down. And like before, they don't want the news to get out that like two people from both of their sides of the war not only are together and in love with each other, but have a child. So he's like kind of like chasing them down, but his first stop is the prison that they were at. And like, he's just interviewing people. But yeah, the book is kind of the main part of that.
Well, back to the freelancers, I just wanted to say I love the naming conventions, because you have the Will, the Stalk. Then what's the Will's like sister's name that shows up in later issues? Like
I
all
can't
you know by their name that they're a freelancer because as soon as they say my name is the whatever, like
The blank, yeah.
I think when the stock says I'm the stock, Alana goes the, and then Mark goes she's a freelancer,
and she just immediately says freelancer. Yeah,
So I just like how it's almost like that's not even their real name. They take on a name when they become a freelancer. It's almost like a legal. Again, back to y'all's point about how the freelancers are so.
It's almost like
legally-
saying "sir," like Lord or something.
Or like
there's something
officer.
around
Yeah.
the.
So it's I love that little detail.
Yeah, I don't remember the Will's sister's name, but I do. I think she has a lion cat like companion that's a dog, and I think his name is Honey Boy or something.
Yeah.
Or like Sweet Boy. I love that name.
We haven't even fucking talked about Lion Cat.
I was going to talk about
Lion
Lion Cat next.
So Lion Cat is a cat that knows when you're lying.
I love
He
the
knows when you're
stock.
lying.
The stock calls him, and the Will has already been like, all right, so the Will got hired to do this job, immediately took the credit card that they gave him and was going on his way to Sextillion and like to go fuck until they cut him off from money. And like the best part is the reason he decided not to go on the mission is because he heard the stock was going to be there and he's like, well, fuck that. He's going to dominate everything. So you already have like this setup of this character who is like clearly has skills, and then he's scared of the stock, so that makes you scared of the stock, and he doesn't want to go anywhere near her. And then she calls him and is like, hey, this job's a little crazy, I need some help. And he's like, I'm never fucking picking up a goddamn phone call from her ever again. And like his cat's just like lying. Like, god damn it. It's like his ex-girlfriend basically, which you come to find out, but it's like one of those things where it's just like he's basically like, fuck that bitch, I hate her, and he's like lying. I just love every time he chimes up and says lying, it like makes me smile.
My favorite part like that is when he gets to Sextillion, the sex planet, and they tell him that Lion Cat can't come into the planet, and the Will says something like, well, you wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway, and the cat just is lying as it's walking away. That was great. It's just like skulking away.
It seems like it's uncontrollable. It's not like the cat's like offering up the information. It just seems uncontrollable. Like if you lie in front of the cat, it just seems to say the word lying. Like it's not like
I just love that panel where he's like, "You wouldn't have enjoyed it. Don't worry, lying."
Yeah. Also, kind of a little tiny side note into Fiona Staples' art again. Like just the weird like. Sextillion literally has enormous like spaceship sized like neon signs floating in space pointing arrows to it. Like it's just like the cartoony dumbness of it, but also if you look at certain panels, there's literally like structure behind the neon lights, like there's like a ladder and like pieces of it like floating through space, and it's just fucking amazing.
If you couldn't tell with the name, Sextillion is a giant planet that's pretty much like an alien version of Amsterdam.
It's just the red light district, but it's a planet.
Yeah. Also, back to the Lion Cat point, that kind of implies that Lion Cat was also going to get its rocks off at Sextillion. Like anything goes.
Of course.
Sextillion.
Well, so Sextillion question. What do you think the Will was looking for? Because he specifically said he walks by orgies and weird centipede.
I think
aliens.
he's just in love with the stock, buddy. He's just...
but he tells the guy like, "I thought you had real stuff here. This is all like child's play."
So
as
again,
if to say like he needs something more.
The stock elevated his expectations of sex.
Okay, so he's just looking for.
And now he's not. That's what his expectations are, and he's looking around.
He's looking for
going,
8 hands.
But also, I think he's just in love. So I think he's just like heartsick and in love, and like nothing's gonna satisfy him because it's not her.
Well, anyway, he has a whatever.
That's my interpretation.
I forgot what Patrick called it, but he has a save the cat moment where he finds a slave girl and he tries to save her to show that the bad guy has a heart.
Yeah, he straight up explodes. He just puts his hands on the guy.
Weird squarehead guy?
Yeah. The weird squarehead guy that works for Sextillion that introduces him to the 6-year-old girl. The Will just puts his hands on either side of his head and squishes, and it just explodes.
This weird, creepy dude takes the Will into the bowels of Sextillion where there's like anything goes area, and what he trots out in front of the Will is a relatively normal-looking human girl, which is also another horrifying choice by Fiona Staples. Thank you for humanizing that to the point of disturbing me. Anyway, like the Will is just like, "How young are you?" And old enough to do whatever you want, or something like that. And he's just like, "Oh fuck," and then he kills this dude, which it does put the Will in this area of like. He immediately doesn't care about the mission he was on. He's not even there to have sex anymore. But then he does call the stock to come help him save this girl. because he can't get this girl away.
And then, I mean,
Does
the
the
arc
will-
finishes where they get to a pretty cool kind of tree, like a magic tree rocket ship, which is kind of interesting. And they use that to get off the planet.
The Will have superpowers?
I mean, he
Could
exploded
you
that guy's
squish
head.
someone's head with your bare hands?
Well, also the
must
question
have
arises: is that
some
guy like
sort of
an
ability.
amphibian? Like, how strong is his skeletal structure? Do you think?
Oh, yeah, that's another. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what that
But,
is because he has weird webbed ears
Yeah,
and a weird
But the
square
Will,
skull.
I mean, would the Will have known that the species has a weaker than? I think he must just have hyper strength or something to be able to do that.
But here's another thing about the narration that I like. It's the scene where the Will kills that guy, saves the slave girl from Sextillion, and Hazel's narration says, "The Will wasn't the first bounty hunter to come after my parents, and he wasn't the last. Like every freelancer I had the misfortune to eventually meet, he was a fucking monster." That is juxtaposed over the panels of him rescuing this girl. So it's this weird thing where
He's
we're seeing
also
this,
dead eye staring ahead while this little girl hugs him, and he's covered in blood, though.
Yeah, dead eye. That was a
He's
very,
just like, I saved you.
very strange.
Well, I think so. I think there's two levels to that. So one is like you mentioned earlier, the saving the cat thing. So yeah, it's humanizing the villain, but he's still a villain. But B, the other angle to it is regardless of what he does on it, how many people he saves on his own, the only context Hazel knew him in was the context of freelancer trying to kill my parents and kidnap me.
Well,
So,
I mean, and to Patty's
of
point,
course, to
the
her,
next line
she's a
is,
monster,
but as my family was
regardless.
about to learn, some monsters are worse than others. I think that comes to show, like, even if he does, and he does eventually sort of fight with them or help them sort of ish later on, like,
I mean, he murders.
there's also
one
this
of them, but
other aspect of, like, you can never really trust him because of what she's saying right here, you know? And I think that's kind of the other point, you know?
I'm over those folksy oracles. Every narration, I'm just over it. I don't know why.
What about Prince
it
Robot
really
taking a
bugged
shit?
me.
Did you like it as much as Alana taking
I
a shit?
did. No, I preferred a lot of taking a shit, but I did enjoy Prince Robot also.
I mean,
taking
it
a
was
shit.
funny, and I like that he.
I like
answers the
how
call
that
from his wife.
that bathroom is a bunch of toilets without stalls. Did you notice that? It's just open
did.
toilets in like a communal area where I guess you just shit
take
in front of
shits
each
next to
other.
everybody. Like, well, it is a prison. Is he
Oh,
using
I-
the prison's facilities?
No, well, he must be using the guard facility. I don't know, but still, it's funny. There's no stall, and it's just
yeah.
open toilets.
You
Anyway,
kind
I
of get
guess
a
we
little tidbit into his backstory here. He is not allowed to come home to see the birth of his own child if he doesn't finish this mission. So it adds this motivation for him. What about Marco losing his shit and fucking going crazy? Like, at first, his pacifism seems annoying, like, which Patty was kind of mentioning.
It doesn't
But
seem
then-
it is.
It is annoying. But, like, when you see the way he loses it, you know, later on, you're like, oh shit, maybe he can't control himself, or he has like a Wolverine type rage that's just, he's just like, berserker mode, and just fucking starts cutting people apart. And you're like, holy shit. And like, if you can't control yourself like that, or maybe it's the magic, or maybe it's part of him that he can't control, or whatever the case may be, like, he clearly needs this pacifism. It's not like something like, and if he turns it on, maybe he's worried that he can't turn it off, kind of like the Hulk style, you know, kind of thing. And it kind of puts in perspective a little bit better, like, why he was the way he was earlier on in the issues, you know, like, kind of thing. Makes him a little more sympathetic is all I'm saying. Even Alana is the one who shoots him to stop him from killing someone, because she knows it'll devastate him.
Yeah, he does lose control. He's drawn differently too. His eyes are all crazy. You know, I believe that it has to do with his magic. It's implied that he is kind of a more powerful soldier than the average Wreath soldier. And my assumption is the magic is so strong in him. It's kind of like, you know, Jedi, dark side, light side. He just loses control.
Okay. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of the background of it. And to your point, yeah, it does make his annoying pacifism more practical. You kind of understand it. But I still think in that first issue, like, what's the difference between what was happening in the first issue versus what was happening at the end of this issue to make you feel like, oh, I need to use my magic now? Like, the same thing was about to happen.
That's a fair fucking point.
I don't know.
Maybe it's just the.
I don't know. Maybe
cumulative
Hazel was
stress.
just born and it hadn't like sunk in like what it meant to be a father yet. Like maybe, I mean, like maybe just having gone through what he already just went through changed something in him, and he's like, oh my god, this is way more.
He was
important
also
than me.
recently. I mean, he'd been emasculated by the stock, who just took him out in 2 seconds. And he had to,
He's
so
like, I gotta
maybe he was-
show that I'm a man.
maybe he's like, I'm not a beta. I gotta show that I can protect my family, that kind of thing. Anyway, none of this matters. He dies in like issue 50.
What if after that, instead of shooting him, Alana's like, I want to fuck you so bad right now? Like Mark Millar just took over the writing for that issue.
Well, just to Patrick's point, I think she makes some comment, not right after there, but at some point of like, I wish I didn't have to wait 3 weeks to have sex or something. So she is hot for him, Patrick. You're
not
okay,
wrong.
Brian
What do
K.
you guys
Vaughan,
think about
do
the
better.
Will finding out that the stock is dead? Like when Prince Robot's just like, yeah, she died. Sorry about that. It was totally legal. And I will be confiscating her ship, but you can come get her shit whenever you want. Anyway, bye, click. And he's like, what the fuck? And it's just like devastated by it.
I like that one just jabroni soldier who's like, oh, I'd testify in your defense in court, Prince Robot.
Yeah.
We all saw it.
We all saw it. She was pulling out a pink, tiny, circular cell phone.
It's a fucking
Oh, wait a minute. Do you all hear that? Do you hear?
Oh, is it time?
Just past the Bechtel test. The Bechtel
The
test. The Bechtel test.
Why don't we have a better jingle for this?
The Bechtel test.
This is
Why
the
don't we
worst
find
jingle.
So yeah, the first 6 issues don't pass the Bechtel test, I don't think.
They do not. I think
There's
it's mainly because the family is very isolated. And it is a man and a woman and a baby.
Yeah, but there's no scene with 2 women talking about something that isn't a man, unfortunately, in the first 6 issues.
That is true. I do think it passes it overall. But
Yeah,
again,
but we're being
with these
specific
main
to
characters.
the 6 issues. We're being specific to the
Yeah,
6
it is. It's a diverse cast, and there is strong female characters and strong male characters.
Well, it definitely.
and they're all
I mean,
over
it
the place.
definitely passes the sexy lamp test because there definitely are women who you can't just replace with lamps in this, as we've talked about.
Yeah,
So
the women are stronger female characters.
But the Bechtel test
isn't there? Wait, you know what? Wait a minute. Wait just a minute, Al. What about is there not enough of a scene between Alana and Isabel discussing Hazel?
Marco's there the whole time though. He's unconscious, but I mean,
I know, but they're it's 2 female characters discussing not Marco.
I know, but but there is technically a man in the scene,
laying dead, passed out on the ground.
I'm just saying, Joe. The test is the test. Like we can't just start rewriting rules to suit our.
I'm asking if that count. That clarified. That's a thing.
I don't know if it does. I do think in general. I mean, it does.
I think it's a gray area. That's definitely a gray area one.
Well, in general, even the comics certainly as a whole does, but even these 6 issues have developed interesting non-male characters in there.
For sure. So Makamori test, great.
Yeah, and the lamppost, all the different tests I think are fine. It's just the Bechtel. Yeah, the lamppost is
Don't forget the sexy lamppost test.
It's not a lamppost. It's just sexy lamp.
Whatever it is, the lamp. We had lamppost. I think we all agree on what it is.
It's just sexy lamp.
Yeah, the lamppost. That's what I've been saying. But the one test,
yeah, that's what I said.
The Bechtel test, it does explicitly fail. So Brian K. Vaughan,
I don't know. I disagree. I don't think it explicitly fails. I think it barely fails.
There's a man and there's an unconscious man in those scenes.
Yeah, but like there's parts of those panels when he's on the ground laying down and the 2 women are standing up. So like he's not in the scene.
I would say it doesn't pass the literal test, but I think it passes. I think the person who started the Bechtel test would still be happy with the fact that there is that scene where I think
that's what I'm saying. Spiritually, it passes the test. By the strict rulings of the test, it doesn't pass. I think it's a gray. I think it's in a gray zone there.
I don't know all the pronged. I don't know the fully pronged test, so I really can't speak.
I prefer to push for excellence rather than praise mediocrity. So I'd say let's just be strict with the test.
I mean,
Brian K. Vaughan, Fiona Staples. Let's just do a little bit better. And you do because I think in later issues, I think it does pass, but just in the first 6 issues that we're talking about.
So the only thing that we haven't really talked about is Alana wants to have sex with the shower, and then the grandparents show up right at the end of the 6 issues. So like, basically to sacrifice something like of great importance, Marco breaks his like magical his lightsaber. He just breaks his lightsaber.
Yeah, and he has to do that to get the treehouse rocket ship.
Yeah, and he does that to sacrifice for the spaceship tree that like will get them off planet.
So one criticism I do have about the art, as much as I like pretty much all the character designs, nobody in this comic ranks on the Snyder Zoo scale. Like nowhere even near.
Yeah, no.
Like even the Will,
looking human.
when the Will is shirtless, even though he's skinny, you can see like some flab hanging over his gut. So just nobody's super ripped or anything in these comics. That's like my
I'd say
one
he's
complaint.
like a 1 on the Snyder scale.
No, he's not. We've been over this. He doesn't even register. Jack Reacher is a 1.
I think Jack Reacher is not a fucking 1.
He's a 1 on the Snyder Zoo scale.
We'll disagree to this to the day we die. Yeah, the introduction of the grandparents at the end is pretty awesome. They just basically teleport right onto the ship and are just like, "What the fuck's going on here?" and start fighting. And like, basically, Marco's like, "Shut the fuck up! This is my baby." And they're like, "Oh shit," And that's kind of the end of the first 6 issues.
I do. I like the Mooney language is interesting because seems sort of like almost Latin-esque to where you can kind of tell what they're saying, but like Marco was like da ba da boo boo da baby or something.
And he's like Expelliarmus, and you're like, oh yeah, get something out of my hands. Yeah, I get it.
So I thought that was kind of neat how you can kind of see what they're saying.
No,
Let me
I
see
like
what
it.
baby was. I think baby was something like bebe or something. I forgot what he actually said for bebe. Bebo.
Tio estas nia bebo. It's a little bit,
he's like patro no.
Yeah, there's a little Spanish in there.
Yeah, I just saw that was cute. Little bebo.
All right, boys. Recommendations for Saga.
Well,
starting with Patrick.
I highly recommend it. It is, if you are looking for a break out of the regular superhero genre, pick up Saga. I would recommend maybe getting the first 2 trades because, as we've talked about, the first 6 issues is a lot of world building, introducing all these different characters. And as Joe mentioned, Marco's parents are fantastic. His mother, especially. Things just keep getting better and better. One point I did want to make, because this book is so novel and it's unlike anything I've read or seen on TV, I thought, how has no studio tried to, adapt this for a TV or movie?
Gobble this up? No idea.
So here's why. Brian K. Vaughan, the reason he went with Image is because they let the creator retain all the IP rights and they just publish it and make money off of it that way. Brian K. Vaughan specifically did not want this to be a movie or a TV show. Brian K. Vaughan only wanted to be a comic book. So his quote exactly was, "I wanted to do something that was way too expensive to be TV, too dirty and grown up to be a 4-quadrant blockbuster." So yeah, that's why it hasn't been adapted yet. However, I did read an interview where he kind of said that he still could if he wanted to. He just has all the rights to it. So my guess is once he finishes this, he's probably going to sell this shit. But
he really doesn't want to.
Yeah,
is what you just said, really.
But he seemed to have no problem selling the rights to make that horrible Why the Last Man TV show. So
that's what I'm saying. I think he's going to wait until it's done because I do believe he at least knows how it's going to end. And I think he might be so excited about it, thinking that it's going to, once it ends and studios know from start to finish that this is a good story, it's going to have an ending that most audiences are going to enjoy. I think he's going to cash in then. But that's why we haven't seen or heard any rumblings about it. Because usually you hear about stuff like that, and this is just so ripe for adaptation.
He's also, as a creator, I'm not saying he's not going to like eventually sell this to a studio. He probably will. But I appreciate at least his artistic integrity to the extent that he wants to finish what he's doing before he does that. He's realistic. He's written a lot of comics. He knows how long it takes to draw something. He wants his story to play out in the way that he wants it to play out without having all that fucking studio bullshit weighing down on it. And I think that's a smart move. Like, whether he eventually does it or not, who cares? Like, the key is that he currently is like, fuck that. I want this to be what it is. And eventually, if he does something with it, great for him. Sell it. Who cares? But
I guess
like,
my-
and they're gonna fuck it up. They're never gonna make this into something that's good.
So it would be such an expensive movie.
Not only that, but it's
TV
like
show.
if it's even remotely less disgustingly pornographic, I'd be disappointed. You know, like kind of it's just like, what the fuck? Why?
On that note, my final note on this entire topic is I think when I get that stupid question at dinner parties when they say, who would you love to have dinner with? I think my answer is going to be Fiona Staples going forward. And I'm going to say, I'd love to just grab lunch with her and be like, where does this come? Like, where does this all come from? It's hard for me to process that all of this came out of one person's brain. It's also bizarre. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get here? What's going on?
How did you retain that amazing childlike imagination for insanity?
So going into it, love Brian K. Vaughan. Loved his writing.
Maybe she just saved all of her childhood drawings because, like, my daughter will produce some weird drawings and she'll be like, "This is schema," and I'm like, "Okay, what are these weird lines?" And she's like, "Those are her fingernails." I'm like, okay, you decided to draw her fingernails coming off of a weird tentacle arm that starts at her ear. But interesting, you know, like kind of thing. I'm like, you know, maybe that's all that. Maybe she just flips through her old sketchbooks from when she was 3 and goes, "Oh, that's a good idea right here. That's those leg ladies, weird heads with legs on Sextillion." You know, like maybe that's what it is.
Vaughn's a great writer, but I think Fiona Staples, her talent almost eclipses his to the point where I don't think this book would be as big of a success if another artist did it. But that's my final take.
I agree. Yeah.
No, I agree, especially because he's not in the first 6 issues, but like that little goose man kind of went.
Oh yeah,
like,
he's the best.
Sort of
Gus.
a meme. Like he's kind of a meme too. So I don't think another artist could have.
Also
done that. Or
that is 100%.
You mean the walrus-faced boy?
That's 100% her creation as well. Gus is it Gus or Goose? He's 100% Fiona Staples.
I don't know. I don't know which one. But
well,
yeah,
there's
but
an
I mean,
over the
right.
U, so I think it's Goose.
I think it's Goose, but right.
I've always said Gus in my brain, but like I'm pretty sure it's Goose. But
Goose is sort of like a viral success out of this. And
he's fantastic.
Another artist would not have done that. So I definitely think Fiona is a big deal.
He's not. Isn't he like a tertiary character? Like, but he's one of the most recognizable characters from this book.
He's the baby Yoda of the book, if you will.
But I mean, I haven't even got the storyline with him too much. I know that he goes on like an adventure with some of the characters, but it's my understanding that he doesn't play a huge role in it. But
he doesn't. He's just wildly endearing, and then like kind of keeps popping up, and it's fucking like you just love him. You know,
there's there's one story later on where they meet these, I think they're like prairie dog people, and they're religious conservative prairie dog people who choose to stay on a dying like asteroid because of their religion. And I don't know, that arc like ends horrifyingly. I really recommend that one. It's like really horrifying how that ends.
So that being said, we have discussed sort of before, like, will we come back to Saga? Of course. Will we be hitting every story arc? Like, will the next time we come back to Saga be 7 through 12? Probably not. Like, maybe we'll jump around, or maybe we'll be like, oh, this is a really good story arc. Let's focus on this one. That being said, like, maybe that's one we come back to. What was your overall take, Al?
No, I loved it. I mean, I know I complained about the narration stuff. Like, I found it a little bit annoying on a second read through, but I still love the comics, love the art. I do want to plug Adobe products. In the back of, so I have the hardback book 1 edition, and in the back they have this detailed look of what it's like to make one issue of the comic, and all they do is plug Adobe products, Photoshop.
Well,
all this
she mentioned something else in terms of drawing inking the panels, the characters.
Yeah.
But then she talks about moving it into Photoshop and just painting the backgrounds. And
but even the letterhead Photographica person also mentions a different Adobe product they use. So apparently it's all about Adobe. Normal. All about Adobe.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fiona Staples apparently like what she wrote is, so she does kind of sketches of the page and then scans it and then uses that as a base, like kind of a template to then digitally.
She makes
draw.
thumbnails of every page, and then she brings it in and blows it up to like full scale, and uses that as her rough like pencils and like
so it's gonna
inks the pages.
But anyway, aspiring artists,
maybe
get Adobe.
So, well, on that note, I think that maybe like why maybe she gets a little more detailed later. Like maybe her thumbnails started as like super rough, so when she blew them up, like, and she's quote unquote inking them in these early issues, maybe that's like why it seems a little sketchier and rougher, and in later issues it's more refined. Maybe her thumbnails got more refined over time. But
I did read
anyway, can't speak enough about Fiona Staples' art. She's fantastic. Congratulations, you are amazing.
I did read an interview with her though about her process, and that is pretty much what she said. What y'all just said, but the reasoning is she really hates. She said it's so boring to her to draw it pencil wise, like really detailed, and then just paint over it. But she said it feels like you're doing the same thing twice, so that's why that's how she does it.
Brilliant move on her part. Good job. I mean, in terms of like creating a comic book and staying on time and putting a comic book out every month, like, and keeping under that strict, insane time structure, like, makes a fucking lot of sense. Like, she's doing it right. Would love to see her draw like a superhero comic or something that was like a little more grounded. Yeah, kind of cool to see her takes on those kind of characters. But also, that being said, never stop drawing Saga. You're amazing.
Joe, did you give an official final take? I mean, I'm assuming we like.
Not really, but I mean, I chimed in a lot. I mean, final take is I loved it. You know, like, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. So that being said, let's move on to recommendations. I think I've chimed in with you guys enough. My overall takes all over this. Yeah, great book. A+ from Joe.
All right, everybody, go read more Saga.
Saga. 3 out of 3. 3 out of 3, you guys. Check it out.
Yeah, 3 out of 3. I mean,
that's rare.
You know,
ish.
Ish. Well, only because we keep covering stuff we all love.
If we like, yeah. All right, everybody. We had a great time.
That's been an episode of the Mobius Couch.
This has been another episode of the Mobius Couch. 3 out of 3, Saga by Brian K. Vaughan, Fiona Staples. Join us next time. Take care.
All right. Bye, Patty. Bye, Al.
Did y'all watch the He-Man?
Goodbye, list.
The Dolph Lundgren movie He-Man, they say good journey instead of goodbye.
Good journey.
We should say that more often. I really love that. Anyways, good journey.
Right. I actually love that too. Good journey.
Tio Esnia Bebo. I love that. Bebo. Goodbye.
All right.
We're done. Bebo.